the way I approach everything is I work backwards. That was the vision. Fuck yeah, let's go crazy. What do you think?
Wha Gwaan Munchy.
Miss Munchy, what we tell him?
I hear me, Miss Munchy. Keeping it locked with Munchy.
Miss Munch! Are you run the thing, so watch you now?
You know me, I say Munchy.
Yell up Munchy. Wha Gwaan Munchy.
Reggaeville family, thank you so much for joining another episode of Wha Gwaan Munchy, and we're coming to you straight from the Reggaeville Easter Special in Dortmund, Germany. With me is one of the headliners of tonight, Benjamin Stanford, better known as Dub FX. How is everything, Benji?
Amazing, thank you for asking.
You're on this tour. I mentioned the name is Dub FX. And there was this particular moment on the street back then when the cool kids asked you what your name was, right? And although you grew up in a musical family throughout your career, you did different styles of music. You told them it was Dub FX. Why did you choose Dub, and what does Dub mean to you?
So actually, that's not entirely true. So when they asked me what my name was, I said Benjamin, and they all laughed at me because they all had cool names like Hurricane and Blizzard and stuff like that. So then I was like, I realized how uncool I sounded calling myself Benjamin. So there was a few different reasons. I was always really interested in dub music, and I liked the fact that I was dubbing my voice live on the streets with my effects pedal. So there's that. But also, I was also a big fan of Shy FX. And I know that in the reggae culture, it's kind of a usual thing. Well, it's not usual, but it's not unusual to take on someone's name, like your Buru Bant into Buju Bant, and Uroy to Iroy. So that was something that I was thinking as well when I thought about it, because I was a big fan of Shy FX, especially because I really love everything that guy does, all of the jungle music, all the dancehall he does. He's done a lot of amazing drum and bass. And so it was sort of the direction that it was a musical inspiration that I was wanting to go. It was like a more modern take on sound system culture.
I mentioned already that you grew up in a musical family. You grew up also in St. Kilda, which is a cultural and musical hub by Melbourne. I think if I would just replace St. Kilda for Trenchtown or Waterhouse, this would be pretty much of a Jamaican biography. Please tell me a bit about your childhood and how you grew up in this musical environment.
I mean, so yeah, my dad, even though he's not a musician, he probably would have been a good musician. He would be a great selector if he was. He's always been showing me great music through growing up. Like he's got a really good taste in music. He loves a lot of soulful stuff from like a lot of Latin music, Cuban music. But he also introduced me to Bob Marley and reggae music. He also liked rock, and he likes anything if it feels good. My mum also, she's got good taste in music, but she's also like she would also be a good musician. She plays the guitar and sings, and she does like cover band songs. Like that's one of the things that she does regularly. Even now, she plays in bands. So I grew up with that, and also my uncles and my aunties. My auntie is an amazing tap dancer, and she teaches at a school teaching tap dancing to like loads of students. One of my uncles, Justin, he's a percussionist and played in many different bands and manages lots of art. He managed a #1 Australian artist in Australia as well. I've got another uncle is like in movies and film and directs big films, and he's also been like a stage actor, like doing musicals and stuff like that. And then I've got another uncle who's like a photographer and a chef and like does so a very artistic family. Everyone was always encouraged in that family to be good. And then on my mum's side, her brother is also a musician. He plays organ in the church. So on both sides of my family, there's music. I'm probably the only professional musician actually now. They all do other stuff nowadays. But I grew up around it. It never was a thing that seemed like hard to do. It was like, I know a lot of people that probably didn't get into music because their family, they didn't see it as an option. They just thought, oh no, first you have to get a real job, like as a doctor or a lawyer or work in a bank, and then if you want to do music, you do that on the side. Whereas to me, it always felt like something that I could achieve and do, so I did.
And you briefly mentioned already your father and that reggae music entered through your father's side. And I think the first album was Legend by Bob Marley, right?
Correct.
Do you still recall the first time you heard that album and what fascinated you about that?
Absolutely, I do remember it because what happened was I showed him. I got into Sublime. I was into punk rock. I was into The Offspring and Blink-182 when I was 12, and I liked all that kind of stuff. And then more like the commercial side of punk music. And then I got into Sublime, and I showed my dad. I was like, Dad, this is reggae music. Listen to this. And he's like, that's not reggae. And so he brought home and he showed me Bob Marley Legend. And I remember the first time I put it on, I was just like, because when you listen to like Sublime or The Real Big Fish or No Doubt, they play reggae, but it's not the same kind of reggae. It's a very white sort of reggae. It's like the groove is different. The musicians in a lot of white music, like punk, especially punk and metal, there's the drums is like playing, and then the musicians, the guitarists and the bass will kind of rush the groove. That's why it sounds really intense, like punk rock sounds really intense, because they're playing in front of the drums. Whereas a lot of black music, R&B, reggae, jazz, the musicians are playing behind the drums, and that gives it a laid back feel. So there's two different genres. It's not that one is more correct than the other. Just one sounds more white and one sounds more black because that's the cultural thing. And so when I heard Bob Marley and it had this different feel version of reggae, at first my brain, and on top of that, I never heard a one drop rhythm because Sublime doesn't do one drops. It's more just bunt, cat, bapunt, cat. Whereas Bob Marley is like a so when you hear the kick drum on the 2 and the 4 or on the 3, depending how you want to write it, it sounds backwards. You don't understand where the 1 is because the kick is in the different spot on the 1 drop. So I just remember my brain not quite understanding it, but loving it because it was so funky. There's really a lot of funk in reggae, especially in the Wailers reggae. And then hearing, like the skanks and the harmonies, really beautiful, like really tight harmonies. I just remember being blown away. I'd never heard anything like it actually at that point because I didn't grow up. I know a lot of people grow up knowing Three Little Birds from when they're like 2 years old. Like my daughters, they've been listening to Bob Marley since they were born. That hadn't happened to me. I was like 14. And so it was a moment that I really remember.
And obviously that fascination that stick with you, it led you also to Jamaica. You've been there, for example, in 2018, and you did some sessions there as well with people like Kabaka Pyramid, Capleton, Eek-A-Mouse as well, Janine, for example. How was this experience over there in Jamaica, also having in mind the parallels of your life and the musical life over there?
Yeah, I mean, so it was our honeymoon. So me and my wife, we got married, and our honeymoon was to go to Jamaica for a week. Then we went to Costa Rica and Panama for like a week and 2 weeks, and we did a festival over there. And then after that, we were going to come back to Jamaica, and that's when we did the work. And we were in Jamaica after that, I think it was for 10 days, and we did 11 dub plates in 10 days. So it wasn't like we got much of a chance to really see Jamaica. We only were in Kingston the whole time. And, every day was a dub plate day. Sometimes, we did two dub plates in one day. And we wouldn't just film one dub plate in one session. We would do maybe two takes sometimes. But it was a really eye-opening experience for me. It was a really challenging one because I'd never been to a place like Jamaica before. There's nothing really like Jamaica. It's a very different society. It's got its own way of operating. Jamaican people, when they're outside of Jamaica, especially Jamaican artists, they come to Europe, they look kind of crazy to a lot of people. People are like, why are they behaving like this? They come across kind of eccentric, but when you go to Jamaica, you understand why. The culture there is a very different thing, and that's why I think they have such amazing art and music scene, is because they operate on a very different level. And when I was humbled by it because I had to kind of check myself and understand how I interacted with people, because I'm the minority there. A white guy you're the minority. And so I had to really it was a very, in my head, there was a lot of things I was wrestling with and understanding how to navigate the culture. But on top of that, also like so many things about their society I love. Like I do a lot of things that I might get in trouble for in Europe, but in Jamaica, no, it's normal. Everyone does it. Like one thing that I loved was I always go around with a little sound system when I go to the park and a lot of the time people look at me like, because I've got music playing while I'm walking down the street. My wife does it all the time. And I was like, I remember, and people always think I'm like some weird gypsy with my little sound system walking around everywhere. In Jamaica, everyone does that. I've seen guys walk in with sound system playing loud and they just go into the shop, buy something, they don't turn it down, they don't turn it off, they just keep it going. No one gives a shit. Things like that, you know? So, you know, people smoking weed everywhere. It was just like so many things that I do all the time and think that I'm weird. I go there and it was totally normal. So it was a really cool experience. There's a lot of things about it I loved, for sure.
So Jamaican by heart, right?
I mean, you know, I wouldn't go that far. I don't think, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things about the Jamaican culture that resonates with me and my personality. But, you know, I would never ever say that I'm a Rasta or anything like that. It's not my culture, and I know that. And I'm, you know, not that I think that we all appropriate different cultures all the time, but I think some people appropriate it without a level of respect that is sometimes needed. So I'm very careful to make sure that I don't do it in a disrespectful way. You know, I think it actually does a disservice to the culture to appropriate something without fully understanding why you're doing it. You know what I mean? So I take what I can from Jamaican and reggae culture the same way I take from all cultures, and that is that, you know, it all fits in my world, in my worldview, like a puzzle. There's things that I take from here, things that I take from there, because I feel like I don't take it because I'm stealing. I take it because I see it's a better way to do something. And so, you know, when it comes to making music, I see a lot of things that reggae music does that makes more sense to me than, say, rock music or jazz music or funk music. Or there's some things that reggae does that I'm like, oh, that makes more sense to my ears. You know what I mean? And the song structure, or the way that I sing a song, the way I write my melodies, it makes more sense for my throat. Some people have different voices. My voice is a specific voice. I'm good at doing certain things, but I'm not good at doing other things. And those things that I'm good at happens to be the same way that, you know, Jamaican MCs do toasting over rhythms. That it works for my voice, and so I take that because it makes my voice sound good. So there's things that that naturally fall into my way of being.
I mentioned. No, I mean, that's why we came for it, to hear all from you. I mentioned Eek-A-Mouse already. You did a session with him in Jamaica. You did a session also with him last night, for example, in Berlin. He is now on the tour. The vibes are amazing. You can catch live vibes. You can catch backstage vibes from the Reggaeville Easter Special, from all the venues that we went to, and of course also from tonight. Reggaeville family, this is still the Reggaeville Easter Special. With me is still Dub FX, and if you want to hear more from Dub FX, of course you can do that also on his latest album. Was released last year. Infinite Reflection is the title. And one person that was involved in this project is also a person that's well familiar with the Reggaeville family and the Reggaeville circle, which is, I think, a friend of yours, Paolo Baldini, right? Yes. Dub producer. How did you get to know him? How did you get involved in this project? I think he played bass. He did also some productions. I mean, you're Italian virgin, right? Because you're half Italian, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how I met him, but we've known each other for a long time. I think I met him in Padova back in 2014, I think because I was friends with Manuel, who's his sound guy. And it just, I don't know, we connected and we were talking over many years. I knew about Mellow Mood and I'd seen them before. And in Italy, we kind of play in a lot of the same circles. It was like we put in the same festivals and nights as well. So it was going to happen anyway. So yeah, Paolo Baldini. And then I just was talking one time and he said, hey man, if you ever want me to play bass on any song, just send me the song. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, just send it to me. And I'm like, okay. So while I was making Infinite Reflection, I had a few songs and I was like, I'll send him one and see what happens, right? So I sent him the song, and like the next day he sent me back a file. That is very rare. Normally in this industry, when you send someone a song, it can take months, even years before they actually get back to you with something. Things can take a really long time. Unless, of course, there's lots of money involved and it's high-level stuff, and that happens really quickly. But when they're all independent artists, things are very slow. He sent it back to me straight away. Not only that, the file that he sent back was perfectly like processed so that all I had to do was put it into the session and it was done. I didn't have to fix anything, didn't have to change anything, didn't have to compress it, nothing, no EQ. So I was like, okay, that was really easy. So I was like, here, try this one and this one and this one. And he just went bang, 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 just sent me back all these killer bass lines. And I was just like, okay, that was so easy. And it took the songs to a higher level, because in the past, I'm a loop artist. So I work with loops a lot, whether I'm making the loops with my voice or whether I'm programming it. I find a loop, stick it in. But there's hard to achieve some dynamics when you do that. Whereas his basic playing, he's playing for the whole song. It's just every moment is a new moment because he's playing it. So that was amazing. Another artist that I also collaborated for on Infinite Reflection, which was great, was Jake Savona, Mista Savona, who's also... Yeah. And so he plays the keys on a few songs on their record as well. So having like a high level, if not one of the top level bass players in the reggae community playing the songs, and one of the best keys skank players in the community on the records, just took everything to a higher level. Plus all the musicians I work with, the horn sections that I play with, Mr. Woodnote and Astro, my trumpet player. And a drummer, Stevie One Drop, he's called. And he's also doing we're doing another record right now. So yeah, high level reggae musicians. That's great.
So those names that you dropped, plus Kate is on it, your wife is on it. Is it important to you to have a personal connection with the people that you do music together?
I mean, I want to say yes, but I don't think it really matters that much, because, there are times where I think, oh, I need this sound, and I just ask around for people that I know. Say, do you know someone who can play this, whatever an instrument it is? And they say, yep. I call them up and we have a meeting and we set it up and record it. I mean, it's not important that I have like a personal, deep connection with them, but it's important that I have a respect for their musicianship. I can tell very quickly if someone is a world-class musician. I only want to work with world-class musicians. Like there's so many of them. Why work with someone who's not spent their life being an amazing musician? Because that's the other thing. When you work with people who are not very good musicians, then you have to do a lot of work afterwards to make it sound good. When you work with high-level people, again, like Paolo Baldini, they just send you a file. It works straight away.
So speaking of that standard that you want for your music, in the streets back in the days and stuff, a lot was about spontaneity, and on the other hand, there's work in the studio. So do you invest a considerable amount of time when you create your music in the studio? Are you there for hours and hours, twist and turn in the knobs on EQ and whatever?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's all I'm doing. I've gotten much faster at it, obviously. There's always room for more experimentation, but most of the annoying stuff is done. I understand. Like the final piece of the puzzle that it took me a really long time to really understand is how to master a song, like the mastering.
So you are doing the engineering and the mastering, the mixing and the mastering, both yourself as well.
Exactly, and because that's the one. It's really hard to know if you've got the mix right before you send it to a mastering engineer, if you don't know what a mastering engineer is going to do to it. So for me, it was always important to understand mastering so that I understood mixing. It's like you got to work. The way I approach everything is I work backwards from the final result. That's even how I worked my career. I didn't just get to this point because it was just like an experiment and I just tried. I knew what my end goal was, and I worked backwards from there. I'm like, well, in order to be performing, my end goal, my always vision was to be performing at big festivals in front of big crowds with me by myself, with all these effects and pedals. I didn't even have a loop station yet when I had this vision. I just knew that I wanted to be in front of all these people with a band maybe, but I was happy to also be by myself as a solo musician with all these equipment, doing my thing as something new in front of these people at a festival. That was the vision. I wasn't Dub FX, I wasn't looping, but I had the vision. I worked backwards from there. Okay, so if I want to perform at festivals, I need to have songs. I need to have a music style that's different, that's unique. I need to have fans that want to listen to my music, and so that the agents want to book me and put me on the festival. So everything was backwards from there. And the final realization was when I tried making songs and sending it to record labels and no one wanted to sign me. I was like, I have to make this happen myself. So that's why I started street performing, because I knew if I start street performing, I will at least create my own fan base without waiting for a record label to invest in me and put me on the radio and create it for me, like, in a synthetic kind of way, right? So I thought, I'm going to create it myself from the get-go, and that's what I did. So I knew the end goal, and I knew all the steps to get there. And I did the same thing when it came to production. I taught myself everything how to do. I never did a school course. I just was like, okay, I want to make my records sound as good as Dr. Dre, as good as Alba Rosie, as good as whoever. I put it all out there in my head, and I just sit there and I analyze. And I take their songs and I put it in an analyzer on Cubase, that I use Cubase, and I look at the frequencies and I analyze the kick drums and the snare drums, and I think, okay, my kicks need to sound like that. So then I'm like, well, my beatboxing also has to sound like that. My bass lines on my effects pedal has to sound like the bass line. And so everything was reverse engineering everybody else, right? And that's just the way my brain works. And so the final piece of the puzzle, I'm getting to the end of the point of this. The final piece of the puzzle was to understand mastering songs, so that I knew that I could do everything from writing the song to recording the song to mixing it and to mastering it. And that's what I can do now. For this last record, I pretty much self-mastered it. And it's probably my best sounding record. Not because the mastering engineers in the past weren't good, but because I wasn't able to mix it good enough for the mastering engineers. But now I understand mastering. I know how to mix the record for mastering, and I know from the get-go when I start recording a song, when I start recording my vocals, I know how I want it to sound before it even goes into the computer. You know what I mean? So, because I know what I'm going to do to it in the computer. And now that's the final piece. So to answer your question about, do I still tweak knobs? Yes. But now it's more of just it's like the creative process.
Would you also say you're a perfectionist?
What do you think? Of course. There's always room for improvement, and I'm always very critical, but I'm also very aware that when you make something too perfect, you lose the soul. And so when I'm recording musicians, that's why I go for amazing musicians, because it means that when you use amazing musicians, when they do things that are imperfect, they do it with intention. Yeah. And so that imperfection is actually the thing that makes it soulful. It's the thing that makes it sound unique and different. If everyone's only playing the perfect notes at all times, it's actually boring. Yeah, it has no soul. There's no soul. And if someone's not a very good musician and they don't play it very well, that's not soulful either. It just sounds shit. So you want to find someone who's an amazing musician, who's just in the moment, and they can play sloppy, but with intention and love and understanding. And that's when you find the best performances. And so when I take those, I don't sit there and clean everything meticulously, because that's bullshit. I take those performances and I find the cleanest way to make it sound as real and as raw as it can, and also sound good across sound systems and live performances and all of that. So I clean it to where it needs to be to sound as good as it for a DJ or for a live performance. Yeah, anyway, you get it.
The album came after a period of change. There was COVID. You moved from Australia to Portugal. You now have your own little family. Did all these changes influence the lyrics, the message, or if not, what did influence this album?
I mean, yes, but I would also argue that my whole life has always been a period of change. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no such thing as like I said with touring, it's never the same twice. And same with my life. You know, I've been moving back and forth from Europe to Australia since I was 5 years old, because my mum lives in Italy and my dad lives in Australia. I lived in Italy for a few years. I'd go back and live in Australia for a few years. I'd go back to Italy and then live in Europe. And excuse me, I lived in the UK for a long time. For me, moving to Lisbon with my wife, the biggest change in my recent time is becoming a father. That's probably the biggest change, because it changes the way that I think about touring and think about how I want to be a father and be a musician at the same time. It's really difficult, because my real priority now is being a dad. That's my number one priority, and it used to be being Dub FX, but I know
dad effects.
Dad effects, but also in order to be a really good dad, Dub FX also has to be successful. So it's mixed together, but I want to provide for my family, but I also want to be with my family. So it's a juggling act. That's why we moved to Europe. That's why we moved from Australia to Lisbon, because all my shows are in Lisbon. But yeah, I think the world is always changing. The world, and there's things about the world that are always changing, but there's also things about the world that are always staying the same. Like we think things are, for example, we think that the world is about to end. We think that there's so many problems now. There's always been problems. There's always been genocides. There's always been also, it's just now it's more obvious because we have our phones in the front of our faces showing us all this stuff. But there was always that stuff taking place, right? So, and same goes with, my life. So yeah, I think, most of my life is trying to shut out the noise so that I can concentrate on just being a good person, being a good dad. And when it comes to writing songs, I've got a backup. I've got my brain is filled with another 5 albums ready to go. So, what I mean? I don't run. I've never had writer's block, and I never will, because my brain's always writing. And whenever I go to the studio, there's always 20 things that I could be working on, and I just have to pick one and just work on that.
So did the songs on the album, the lyrics on the album, were they influenced by any significant developments that were actually happening? Or because I think a lot of the lyrics fit so perfectly in 2024, 2023, in this time that they're out now? Or is that coincidence because you said history repeats and wars repeat, unfortunately, and all these things?
Yes, absolutely. I think, one of the things that I try to do, and that is when it comes to songwriting with lyrics, I've always tried to make sure that my lyrics have a timelessness to them. That writing a song, I've never been about writing something for the moment, because, sometimes moments pass and, but there is, like you say, there are certain things like wars that are always coming and always going. There's always going to be oppression coming from the world's elite. There's always going to be discrimination. There's always going to be things. There's always going to be people looking for spirituality and self-discovery. So, the main theme that I've always written about, the thing that I probably all my songs have, and is there's always self-reflection, but more self-empowerment. I hate it when I hear people write a song and it's just about being depressed, and that's all. It's like, if you're going to write a song about being depressed, okay, but also write about how you're going to get better. Show me some way, that a journey in the song. If it's just, I'm so depressed, oh my God, it's like, okay, boring. But if you can write a song that shows you how you're working on it, how you're going to get better, and how it's like something that's like some kind of way of bettering yourself, then people will come back and listen to that song forever, because they want to get back to, they want to feel that energy of, it's like a way of sort of re-upping yourself. You understand? I wrote a song called Love Me or Not. It's a breakup song about breaking up with a girl, but it's not about the breakup. It's about how I'm going to get over the breakup. You know what I mean? Same goes with anything to do with we don't need no war. It's like this, it's a solution based. It's like, it's not, this is just shit, fuck you. It's like, we could work like this, we could do this. And it's not about saying, this is you are the problem, they are the problem. It's, these are the problems that I have. I need to work on this, because if I work on this, the world will get better. Not because I'm the greatest, but because if we all worked on making ourselves a much better version of ourselves, more empathetic, more loving, more understanding, more caring, if we all did that, then there would be far less problems in the world. you know. So I never try to write songs like they did this, you did that, yeah. It's more like I did this, I did that, I need to do this, I need to do that. And when people hear that, they go, oh shit, that's me too. I should work on that too. It's far more powerful. So that's why I think you're saying like it all feels about for now, because that's the approach I take. I'm always trying to make sure that the songs are about me getting better, which is about you getting better, which is about everyone getting better.
If you want to hear those messages, the album is out, Infinite Reflection is out by Dub FX. And of course, he is still playing live, so you can catch also live impressions from the Reggaeville Easter Special, from Dub FX on stage with Mr. Woodnote, from all the places they went, and also, of course, from the other artists that are on this tour with him. On stage, in the very moment that you're performing, you still go with the vibe, or are you like, does that everything happen automatically because you're so used to it? Or would you, I mean, for an outsider, it's a whole lot of technical equipment and a whole lot of technology, and for people who are not familiar with sound engineering, it looks like a big science. How is that for you? It's like how others just play the guitar and...
No, I mean, yeah, I think that would be the difference between an artist that sounds really good and an artist that doesn't sound very good. I mean, that's really it, you know, like I think the reason why I can rock up and I can play straight after Skrillex and not sound like the volume is decreased and the energy is decreased. I can do that. I've been working for years on this. I know if I'm playing with reggae bands, I will not play the crazy hardcore shit all night. I'll maybe do a few moments where I go to there, but I won't, you know, won't just do that. I want to sort of keep the vibe in a particular area. But if I'm playing at the end, then yeah, fuck yeah, let's go crazy. I'll ramp it up to the end. But you know, it's like I know my place and I know where to put it. To answer your question about, you know, what am I thinking about when I'm on stage, you know, about the technical stuff, I've done all the hard work. Most of the hard work is done for over the years that I can just trust that the set list, before we go on stage, we just sit there with the iPad and we go through the sets and we say, well, this will work, and we come up with the order together and we figure it out and we say, okay, that's about an hour and that's a good flow of the set, but all the stuff is programmed, ready to go. We do the order, play through the order, and it's fine, the hard work's done. So now I'm not thinking so much about the technical side of things. I'm thinking about the performance. I'm thinking about projecting consciousness into the microphone while I'm singing to the people, because that's what people came for. They didn't come for scientific analysis of the 550 hertz. They don't give a shit about that. They just want to see someone sing a song and feel moved by the performance.
For tonight and for those shows coming up, for the family, for all the rest, for the works coming up, Dub FX Benji, thank you so much for talking to me today, for taking the time and the inspirational words as well as the music. All the very best for the future. Thank you so much.
You're welcome to have me.
Wha Gwaan Munchy.